Hello and welcome to Book Reviews Kill, a podcast about fantasy, science fiction, and horror novels. I'm Evan.
And I'm Chad.
And today you're joining us for our recap and discussion of The Drawing of the Three, Book 2 in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I am so glad we're reading these books. Oh man.
Me too. I never hated on you for loving Stephen King as much as you did. I just figured that I just hadn't read the right books because I had only read once or twice. Now I get it.
Now
Wow,
you get it.
do I get it. Also, before I get rolling here, just so everyone knows, I've been kind of like having a little sickness this week and my voice is just almost gone. So if it sounds like I'm talking super deep on purpose, it's because I have no higher register.
I think you sound kind of sexy.
Well, thank you. Sound like Elvis. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so last book, we got like a taste of Stephen King's writing skill. Like there's like a fancy car, right? And we felt the supple leather seats and the amenities that most cars don't have, like windows that change their tint according to the sun's brightness, climate control. And in this book, we got to see the engine, not the fancy frills, but the real reason why this car cost $500,000. Like we're like pressed into the back of the seat, like breath happily sacrificed to the G-force pantheon. The car going from 0 to 150 in 5 seconds, and like barely slowing down as you whip around a corner. Just wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is where it happens, man. This is the quartet is forming. We've got our characters more like coming into play here. Like a lot of people have told me that they read The Gunslinger and then because of how cryptic and lyrical and sort of like nonsensical the book felt to them, they decided not to carry on with the series. And I always say at least read The Drawing of the Three. That's where these books really find their feet, in my opinion. And the next book is even better. And I'm not gonna talk about the Wastelands, but the next book is even better than this. And we're still setting up the journey here. Like we haven't even left Rivendell yet. You know,
yes,
it's yeah.
That was one thing that I really was impressed and was really refreshing in this series and the second book was that these books are so well paced. I feel like in a lot of the big epic 10 book series, you have so much already happening.
Yeah.
And like we've gone through so many different phases and stages, and we've been in school and we've graduated, we've met our person that's going to like make us better and teach us some things, and we're in the thick of it. And this is like the first book was about one thing. It was almost like a big prologue.
Yeah, the first book is kind of one big prologue,
yeah, one big prologue. And then the second book, it was just huge. I was really excited when I realized that this was about him just collecting his crew, going from door to door to door. I was like, that's all this book is. How awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the series gets a lot weirder for sure. I'm not gonna lie to you. We definitely derail a couple times. But yeah, I mean, we are still doing the slow burn right now. We're getting onto the train, and let's just get right into the recap, and then we can keep going on about it.
Let's do it.
The book begins hours after Roland wakes up following his palaver with the man in black. Lying on the beach, Roland is attacked by a strange, lobster-like creature, which he calls a lobstrosity. He kills the creature, but loses his right hand index and middle finger, and most of his right big toe. His untreated wounds soon become infected. Weak and suffering a fever, Roland continues to trek north along the beach, where he eventually encounters 3 doors. The first door, labeled The Prisoner, brings Eddie Dean, a young heroin addict currently smuggling cocaine into New York for the drug lord Enrico Balazar. Roland brings Eddie back through the door so he can hide the cocaine and get through a customs inspection, but the agents become suspicious and subject him to a lengthy interrogation and begin following him once he is released. Balazar learns of these events and kidnaps Eddie's heavily addicted older brother Henry in order to force Eddie to meet and deliver the drugs. After Henry dies from an accidental heroin overdose given by Balazar's men, Roland and Eddie go through the door and kill them. Eddie decides to continue on with Roland, though he is still wary of the gunslinger. The second door, labeled The Lady of Shadows, reveals Odetta Holmes, a black woman active in the civil rights movement. She is wealthy and missing her legs below the knees after being pushed in front of a subway train. Odetta is completely unaware that she has an alternate personality, a violent, predatory woman named Detta Walker. Roland and Eddie are forced to deal with both of these personalities when Roland brings Odetta's body into their world, with Detta suppressing Odetta during most of their travels. After Roland enters the third door, Detta captures Eddie and uses him as bait for the lobstrosities, hoping to force Roland to come back and return her to her world. Instead of revealing a new companion, the third door, labeled the Pusher, brings a new adversary to Roland, Jack Mort, a sociopath who takes sadistic pleasure in killing random strangers. He is also the man responsible for the head trauma that created Odetta Holmes' alternative personality, the loss of Odetta and Detta's legs, and the death of Jake Chambers. Roland arrives in Jack's body just as he is about to push Jake into traffic, and stops him from doing so. Under Roland's control, Jack acquires medicine and ammunition that Roland needs to survive, then jumps in front of the same subway that hit Odetta Detta years earlier. Roland returns to his world just before impact, having made sure that Odetta Detta sees Jack's death in order to force the two personalities to confront each other. They merge into a third, stronger personality, Susanna Dean, and she stops the lobstrosities from trying to eat Eddie. As the group travels away from the beach, Eddie, having broken his drug addiction after a painful withdrawal, begins to fall in love with Susanna. Both owe their lives to Roland, but Roland ruminates on the knowledge that he may eventually need to sacrifice them to reach the tower. What a way to start this book off. Like
Yeah.
Roland losing his two fingers.
Oh my gosh. I was actually pissed.
Were you?
Oh, I was enraged. Not at the author or anything. There's a level of injury that's like you can't go back. You know,
Right.
there's like breaking your arm, and then there's losing an arm, and it's just like that's a life altering one. Like, what if you can't play video games anymore? Done. Sorry.
I mean, you can play video games with one hand with the Xbox. I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could
There's
find
an
a way to
injury
do
you
it.
can't really come back. It alters your life so much, especially for a gunslinger, right?
Right.
He lost the two fingers that he would pull a trigger with. It's in like the first 10 pages of the book.
Yeah, like I kind of thought it was a joke or he was dreaming because it kind of happens casually. Like he like wakes up and these things are like peeling back the layers of his boots and they're like chomping and then like chomping on his hands like and then he looks down and his two fingers are gone. I was like, whoa, no.
Yeah.
And then oh, when he's
No.
like
Yes.
struggling for to load bullets the whole rest of the book with his one hand, I was just like, ugh. It's like
Yeah.
not like this guy like was living problem free, you know?
No, it just keeps getting worse too. I mean, to jump forward quite a bit, I mean, like Susanna, I'm just gonna call Odetta and Detta Susanna because that's what she's called for the rest of the series. But I mean, Susanna doesn't have legs below the knee, you know. I mean, and Eddie is recovering from a heroin addiction. Like
Yeah.
they're not starting off in a very good place here at all. This
No.
is not a good situation.
I mean, Roland spends most of this book all of this book basically like on the edge of death. Like
Yeah,
willpower alone is powering him through. In fact, if he was like in his body the whole time, he probably wouldn't have made it. He just kind of like puts his body on pause and then like goes back and goes into other people's brains. I typically don't like it when fantasy novels have modern day things in them. Like I don't want someone checking their Instagram in my fantasy novel. Not that happened in this, but it was just done in such a way that I never left the magical world.
yeah. It's kind of wild how he was able to do that, huh?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
it was very and then again another thing that I don't really like is going inside of other people's brains. I was like, "Oh, how
yeah.
typical," because the only Stephen King book that I've read before this was Dreamcatcher and he spends a lot of that book is spent inside other people's brains and it gets a little annoying. But
Well,
this
you
was
read
just
Eyes of
done
the
so
Dragon
well.
too, right?
Oh, I did read Eyes of the Dragon. I always forget that that's Stephen King because it's so different.
Yeah, and it's kind of a little bit connected to the Dark Tower in a weird way.
Ooh,
Like
what way? Do I know enough to ask you what way?
not yet.
No. Okay.
Kind of. No, we'll get to that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um. Yeah. Okay. So he goes into Eddie's brain, and Eddie, you got to give it to him, is very accepting of Roland coming. Like he freaks out a little bit,
Yeah.
as anyone
Yeah.
would, but you know, like that's a pretty big violation. Like if you felt someone else in your brain, you're just like, and like he feels him shuffling, like rifling through his
Yeah.
thoughts and his
Yeah.
memories. And even when he leaves, and like Eddie's kind of insecure, and he's like, "Oh man, I was kind of enjoying him there, like someone who knew what the hell he was doing." It was just kind of an interesting, like he nailed the person, you know.
Yeah, Eddie was very quick to kind of say like, "All right, I guess this is what's happening now." But I mean, I guess we can't hang out too long in like Eddie's incredulity at this situation. Like, obviously it's weird, but we do have another situation on our hands here in the airplane, which is how do we get this cocaine off of Eddie's armpits and help him through this whole situation? And I just loved it. Like that's like my favorite part of this whole book is Roland meeting Eddie and the way that he meets him, and he's just constantly like, shut up, maggot, like we have to do
Yeah.
this, like stop fucking around, like let's just come on. Okay, so get in here. And then they bring Eddie in, and just the whole part of like Eddie cutting all the tape off of himself. He accidentally stabs himself in the stomach with Roland's super sharp knife, and they just rip all this stuff off of him, and it's so like suspenseful and cool. And then he just gets shoved back into the plane, and then pretends that he's going to the bathroom, and it's just
Right.
everything is just, it's all moving so fast. And I like what Stephen King does also, and he does it quite a few times in this book, where he'll have an event happen, and then he kind of like rewinds just like 30 seconds to a minute into what another person was thinking like right before that event took place. So even,
Right.
and I don't know if so I've read a ton of Stephen King, and this is this is like your third or fourth Stephen King book.
Yep.
um I love that he does this, but I know that a lot of people get really frustrated when King does this, but I think it's very endearing. I don't know how much I would like it if other authors did this, but King really likes to have the most minor of minor characters, like the captain in the plane. You know what
The
I mean?
stewardess.
And yeah, with the stewardess, that's a really good example. I mean, she's thinking back to like her time in like this academy, and like it. He gets so specific and really long-winded about different experiences that people have that you're never ever going to see again. I mean, what did you think about that? Like, as a new
Oh,
kind of Stephen King reader, what do you think about it?
it didn't bug me at all. In fact, that sort of thing adds a realness to the person. Like they don't just live on the page and right there. They're not just a tool or a mechanism for the story to proceed. They're a real character interacting with our real character. And like she had the voice of her instructor when she was
Yeah.
learning how to be a stewardess in her head the whole time, being like, no, like don't disregard that feeling. That's your instinct. That's what can save lives. And she keeps hearing about it, and we hear about her, and but it's not like overly long. It's just mentioned as a way to kind of give her reality and life off of the page. And I think because of that, she's all the more powerful and substantive.
Yeah, it's such an interesting way of doing it, because he could have simply just had, like, from Eddie and Roland's perspective, instead of switching perspectives around a bunch in this very tense scene, he could have just had Eddie see this flight attendant's body language and know that she was onto him. And that would have been kind of interesting, but this is so much more interesting. It grounds her so much more into this story, even for the tiny part that she's playing in it. It's just masterfully
So
done.
much. Absolutely, it's masterfully done. Like it just adds so much more depth to it. Like, yeah, if you would have seen her body language, we could be like, it would have been, we would have been scared, but we wouldn't have gotten those like chapter ending statements of like, and she was gonna keep an eye on him. And you're just like, oh man, he's
This is going to get
effed.
so
Like,
bad. This is going to get,
yeah, like he
yeah.
loves to get you worried, which is great because it shows that you care about his characters and what's happening and stuff. And he uses that very well. And I don't mind that. I kind of liked that we got to jump over to the captain, who was like, okay, I'm gonna ram it down, asking the people on the outside to try to get figure out the situation. I just thought that was a cool way for us to see the whole events of what's happening and for us to be like, come on, cut it.
Yeah, and another thing that I really, really enjoy about this book in particular is that, with Eddie and the cocaine, he stashes the cocaine through a portal to another dimension, and with Roland controlling Jack Mort and things like that. It's like the outlying people that are kind of observing all of this, like Balazar, he's so dumbfounded. He has no idea where this cocaine went. Like, how could Eddie have possibly been in this room for 2 hours and then gotten rid of this cocaine, and now he's saying he has it? And it's like these people can't comprehend just how ridiculous of a situation this actually
Right.
is. Like, it's not even a possibility. And you as the reader, you're just sitting there like, oh, they have no idea.
No
This is so
idea.
wild. Yeah, yeah.
And it's
He's
cool
oh
because like
god,
we all love magic, right? And like being tricked, but like not in those sort of situations. It's
no,
like those are we don't want unexplainables and those like, okay, fine, I guess he just did something. No. It's like
yeah,
he could sense something like almost otherworldly and he's like, I don't like this multiple times.
yeah. I mean, this book is such an amazing mix of like there's like a mob gunfight,
Yeah.
right? I mean, in a fantasy book, like we have like this interdimensional travel into a mob setting because of a cocaine deal gone wrong. But this is a fantasy book. I mean, this is it's such a fantastic mix of so many different things. Not to mention, while we're talking about the mob thing, what did you think about Eddie fighting naked?
Oh gosh, that
That's
scene
so
was one
Eddie.
of my favorite scenes. It displayed Eddie and like it displayed Eddie's gunslinger soul. We needed to see a little bit of Eddie being like, "I got this," and like, yeah, he showed like wit and some like ability to perform under pressure before this, but that was like he was like, "I'm rising to the occasion and gonna do it." He saves Roland's life
Couple
uh,
times.
a
Yeah.
couple times,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was not plot armory, even though it was kind of plot armory.
I mean, they missed like every single shot that they were like stormtroopers, like
Yeah,
Palazar's mob people, but whatever, it's fine.
whatever. Yeah, but I mean, it shows like it even says it even kind of like explains that though, because like the guy who comes in and just like cuts down the whole room gets a little giddy with his like machine gun, and it's
Yeah,
talking about like any time if you hold on a trigger that's a machine gun after a while, you're just gonna start like going up. You're not like hitting. You're not being purposeful and deliberate. You're just kind of spraying. And he ends up hitting a couple of his own people.
speaking of Roland in particular, did you think that Roland's personality was any different in this book compared to the gunslinger?
So I think he's more authentic and not only to himself but like to others around him. So in the first book, I think he kind of surprised himself at the end when he realized that he was willing to let Jake die in order to complete his mission. And he's like made that decision and I think he was kind of like, "Well, we always wonder what we'll do in those situations, but we never truly know until we're there." And he knows for good or bad what he's willing to do to complete this mission. And so I think he was just a little more like action first. Like he was so committed to this path and he's a little bit more reckless as a result, which was just fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
When he decides that he needs to make contact with Eddie, he doesn't think about like, oh, Eddie's gonna freak out. What am I gonna do? He's just like, nope, boom, Eddie.
Yeah, he doesn't
Stop
really
your
have
little
much
maggots and listen to
concern,
me.
like, yeah, if Eddie's gonna be okay. He just needs to bring him through here and like do whatever this trial of this door is, because the tower is everything. And even at the very end of the book, Eddie has a conversation with Roland and says, like, hey, come on, like, are you gonna kill us? You know,
Right. He
like,
basically
and
asked him, "Are
you're
you willing to let us die to
right.
accomplish
Not
your goal?"
are you going to kill us, but yeah, are you gonna let us die? And Roland's like, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. He like super sides. He like super politicians. The answer. He's like,
Yeah.
"We'll do our best, but
What was your favorite part in this book?
call me a sucker for violence and cheap gunfights, but just the gunfights."
The
And
gunfight. Yeah,
too
yeah,
specifically, the showdown in Balazar's office. Just this tight little contained room with like bullets flying every which direction. Eddie's naked. People are dropping all over the place. They win. It shows Roland's steel. Like in the first book, he's kind of a self-contained person. So we're like, yeah, he's pretty cool, but we didn't get the proverbial Worf head of security getting taken out immediately, so we can see how by proxy this bad guy is like super bad. And in
yeah,
this, we got to see some like really hardcore street tough criminals take one look at him, even in his like beleaguered, almost dead state, and be like, "Oh man, I am soft as a cloud compared to this hard man."
yeah. The way that he's described when Eddie first sees him is just like, this guy is not dead right now. He's just about to be. But still, there's something about Roland that Eddie can tell is so strong, right? Like he's so like otherworldly in his presence and strength, and it's a really interesting like contradiction there because like Roland probably looks like, I mean, he's got like his veins are all red, you know, he's totally infected and feverish and weak and starved, but there's
Dirty,
still something
bloody.
so like attractive, like almost in like a gravitational way about Roland. I like the way that his eyes are described, like his blue eyes, like the color of like faded denim or like
Hmm.
old blue jeans or something. Ah, God, the
Yeah,
language.
he is the perfect like quintessential gunslinger. Like when he was just like looks at people like doo-doo-doo, I can hear that like whistle that I cannot hit that sound with my voice right now, but I can hear it in my head and he just like he's just the way he moves. It's just he's a cold operator.
Yeah, I think that Stephen King had described him like pretty much like Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Um, but it's funny because so the Dark Tower movie is garbage. It's really
Uh
bad. And I don't make those kinds of statements very often, but I will say the Dark Tower movie is objectively terrible.
doesn't it have
Uh,
Matthew McConaughey?
yeah, and
Uh
Idris Elba as the gunslinger. And so that's who I'm seeing now because Idris Elba is just he's just a perfect Roland Deschain. But for the
yes.
first time I read this, I pictured him as like a Clint Eastwood kind of like like tall, kind of like lanky white dude like character. But it's like,
Yep.
dude, like Idris Elba. Idris Elba is the only part of that Dark Tower movie that actually makes sense. Everything else is a total disaster.
Oh, that's
Like I
so bad. And this
I
would
know.
be did they do all 8 books in
Oh
one
no,
movie?
no, no.
Oh,
It
okay.
was yeah. We don't. Well, let's try to have a nice podcast because if we
Yeah. Let's
if
just
I
say they should
if
make this into a TV show. This
oh
is so episodic,
absolutely
it would be
yeah
perfect.
yeah it would be
Um,
really good.
to go back to just the greatness was my second favorite part, which was the whole escape scene of him getting away from Jack at the end, where he goes into
Yeah
the pharmacy, and it's so
yeah.
funny because he expects to see like wizards, like alchemists,
That's so
like all these
good.
like bubbling
Yeah,
tubes and all these things, and he's like, "Where's the mage?"
it's just like people shopping for
You
stuff
can
in like a normal grocery or drugstore
right, you
or
can hear like
whatever.
corporate music just playing in the background. It's like so like not an apothecary of like mysterious magic.
Well, and he's like robbing this drugstore, right? At this pharmacy. And the pharmacist, when Roland leaves, he's like, he just took like $60 worth of penicillin, like
Right, and he gave him a
antibiotics.
watch.
$6,500 watch.
Yeah,
That's
and he pays for the
just
bullets too
yeah.
when he robs the guy. Just like oh Roland. He's such like a I'm going to get this done and I don't care how I'm going to do it. Like when he like bashed the two cops' heads together, I was like, oh my gosh, like here we go.
He just killed two. Oh, he didn't kill them. He made a very good point that because he calls them gunslingers too.
Hmm.
It's just really funny. It's like cops in this day and age, say what you want about them, like they're not as cool as Roland Deschain.
Thumbs in their pot bellies, eating some
Yeah,
donuts,
yeah,
staking
right.
out the guy like
Roland's just like they don't look like great gunslingers, but they're still
that.
gunslingers.
I have to respect him. The name is there. And then at the end, when he takes out the other guys, he's like, "You guys were actually good, but like, don't lose your honor." So he gives them like a
Don't
pep
forget the
talk.
faces of your fathers.
Yeah.
You have forgotten the
Oh my
face of your
gosh.
father.
There was multiple times like the things that he said that I was just like, "Oh, Roland, I love you."
I know he's like kind of deliciously ignorant about stuff. But I mean,
Yeah.
why wouldn't he be? I mean, he's seeing all this like when Eddie gives him the hot dogs and the soda, when he drinks the soda and he's like, "Wow, this is so sweet." Like, why would anybody go to the trouble of smuggling cocaine when sugar is all over the place? And it is kind of interesting to think about because like I mean, we consume sugar on a fairly regular. I mean, I know you do. Like I know
Oh yeah, I'm a
I know
sugar fiend.
but I mean, we're pretty desensitized to sugar. But if you went like 6 months without touching sugar, like at all, other than like maybe eating a piece of fruit now and then, by the time you had a Pepsi, like that would taste it would probably taste bad, honestly.
You'd
Like,
probably be like, "Ugh, like so sweet." You know that last scene of like the Mummy Returns when the
oh yeah,
Oasis gets turned into the jungle and all like bursting forth. That's
oh
kind
yeah.
of what it would be like in your mouth. Okay, so
Okay,
one of
okay.
my this is what I pictured.
That's some good content right there.
I know it really is
Hmm.
good notice me. Thank you. So as like silly. as Roland could be sometimes, he has like really wise moments, where Eddie was like asking him, like, well, like a cliche, like, do you know what that means? And he responds just lickety split, it means what is always said or believed by people who think little or not at all. That is a great definition of cliche. Like I
Yeah.
sat and thought about it for like 5 minutes and just kept getting better and better and better. I was like, oh, that was so deep. And of course, Eddie was like, yeah, no, I could not have said that better
Yeah,
myself.
that's
Wow.
totally right. I didn't think you were going to have an answer for that. Yeah. What did you think about Eddie and Susanna hooking up? Like falling in
Okay.
love as quickly as they did? Like what are your thoughts on that?
I tried to not think about it too much,
Hmm.
honestly, because like I feel like if I would have given it a little bit of an eye roll,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
then it's like, I don't know, sometimes you just know. But it was kind of odd that he spent like what, a minute or two looking at her into her eyes before she becomes Odetta and goes off the rocker, and it's just like,
Oh, you mean Detta?
or Detta, so yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, she becomes Detta and then is just very, very mean.
I typically don't like a like insta love kind of
Sudden love,
situation.
yeah.
But with this, I'm gonna try and say this without spoiling it, but Ka is an interesting, funny thing, you know? Like Eddie and Susanna. Yeah. We will
Yeah,
see more of them soon.
I love the Ka thing because that's kind of what I put in my brain too. Is just like, it's just kind of what needs to happen in this story. And you know, the guy has also been numb for the last, what, 10 years of his life. And he's just now coming free of his addiction and feeling things for like the first time. Like, it kind of stands to reason that the first person that he would be attracted to in that way, that he goes through traumatic like experiences with, like those feelings would be strong and like fresh. And it's like first time he's felt them. He's probably like a 7 year old.
Yeah, and like King wastes no words in telling us, the audience, that Susanna Odetta is a very beautiful woman. Like Odetta is super smart. She's a very refined person. She was part of the civil rights movement. I mean, like she's just a very intelligent, like well, like well-meaning person. And I think
Yes.
that in contrast to Roland, maybe Eddie was like, "Oh, thank God! Like
Right.
somebody here that understands my world to an extent and is not like doesn't think that I'm just like a pain in the ass."
A
Versus,
maggot, yeah, has an
yeah,
ounce of empathy.
yeah.
I did think it was a little odd that they made love on the beach so quickly, because it was kind of like, okay,
Hi,
this is what I was doing in my brain, right? So Eddie already gets told once by Roland, like, hey, keep your wits about you,
keep
and
your guard
then
up.
keep your guard
Yeah.
up. Yeah, and then Roland like lets him almost get attacked, or lets him pretty much get
Oh, be
attacked
on
by
your
her.
guard. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but be
Oh
on
no,
your
you're fine.
guard is what he said. That's just
Be on your
key.
guard, yeah. And
Yeah.
then he doesn't at all, and Roland like watches with eyes through eyes slitted as she's about to like brain him with a rock, um, and then lets him suffer from that, and then like tells him afterwards, like, to bring the point home, like, remember me telling you that? Yeah, this is what I meant. And then it's like, okay, they know that she saw a flash of her other side when she was led into their world through the door.
Yeah.
And someone as scheming, Odetta is very smart, and so is Detta. Obviously, they're the same person. So it's like, wouldn't you think that Odetta might be, because she has a stronger personality, be forcing the other one down and then only let her come to the surface so she could be genuine and like kind of break down their walls, build up trust? And then what a better time to grab a rock and brain him. It's like the classic spy hooking up with someone else, and while they're
Oh yeah, I didn't
defenseless,
really think about that,
takes him
and it
out. I
is,
was like,
yeah.
Eddie, come on, man. Like, this is the lesson that you just learned. And
But he
now,
doesn't learn his lessons very
ever.
easily. Yeah.
No. And then even a third time, he like gives her the gun. It's like, oh my gosh.
I love when Roland's just like, she's got live iron. Like you gave her the gun. I told you not to give her the gun, and Eddie's just like, ah.
Yeah.
And she's just up on that hill, like scoping them out, and then Eddie falls asleep when he's like going up to go deal with her or
I
whatever.
thought for
And
surely it must be
yeah,
he's faking it. He's faking it. He's gonna
yeah,
get her
he
because
fell
he's learned his
asleep.
lesson. Nope. He actually fell asleep. I was like seriously disappointed. I was like,
Yeah,
man, really? Eddie.
he forgot the face of his father.
Yeah, he forgot the face of his father for sure. But yeah, he was just like, yeah, you're gonna give her live iron? Like, oh, Detta could come back at any minute, and you're gonna give her a gun with bullets.
I mean, Odetta didn't want it, to be fair. But
Right.
I do like that theory. It's not really a theory, but just I mean, because it's brought up in the book, right? That Detta and Odetta might have some sort of, if not an understanding, then Detta is obviously the more strong force in
Mhm.
this situation. But I like your thinking there that like Detta was still like Odetta was still Detta maybe at certain points. I don't think that's actually true, but I
I
think
don't
that
think so.
I think it's interesting for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I was wrong. But even when she was like, "No, don't give me the gun. It'll make the gun snap." I was like, "This is really good manipulation and it's working perfectly." Like Detta's in the background just like snickering like he's gonna give me the gun. Don't give me the gun. Just give me a pile of rocks. And then it's like he
Just
gets
give
the
me some
loaded
rocks.
gun. Yeah, and then of course she's sneaks off. Man, she can get around.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pretty impressive. Like she gets pretty far away from their camp.
Yeah. I mean, she's determined for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, just Odetta doesn't seem like she has that like iron that is going to be needed, especially for someone who has such a huge challenge to overcome without the loss of their legs or without the function of their legs on a like adventure where they're traveling a bunch, you know? So it's like she's gonna need the steel that's in Detta. And so the kind of merging of their characters was a cool and I think needed um thing to happen.
Yeah, like I don't know if you noticed this, but Roland kind of continuously compares his old friends, like Cuthbert and Elaine and stuff, to these new people that he's brought into his life, and kind of is thinking of them as gunslingers already, and like just
Yes.
keep that in mind, um,
He
like
even
Eddie.
judges them as his friends would judge them.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, and like that, man. I Susanna becomes one of my favorite characters in this whole series. She's awesome. Like she's really really great. Like
Isn't one of the books even called Song of Susanna?
the sixth one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people don't like Song of Susanna. I think it's great. It's like one of my favorite books in this whole series. People's favorite book seems to be number 4, which is not my favorite, but maybe it will be on our next read through. But
Interesting.
I don't know. I wanted to go over this quote really quick. And it says, "Might as well try to drink the ocean with a spoon as argue with a lover," which I love that. And there's another quote. It's not really a quote, but
Why do you love it so much before you move on from that one? I want to hear
well,
your like thoughts behind it.
I have to say this other part
Okay,
to
okay, they're
explain.
linked. Okay.
And then there's a part where Roland says that he can recognize a fool when another fool sees another fool. I'm kind of paraphrasing there, but it really puts Eddie and Roland on like similar ground. Like Roland's, I asked you earlier if you had noticed any kind of like changes in Roland's personality, and like I liked your answer a lot, and like my answer to that would be that like in this book you're seeing Roland kind of like open himself up more to the possibility that he also has flaws, you know, and then he sees a lot of his own flaws in Eddie, and there's a sort of like camaraderie that's starting to build between the two of them where they're kind of like on an even playing field almost. Like obviously Roland is much older, much wiser, much more capable, but like Stephen King really like he's really drilling it into us that like Eddie is really sharp. Like
Hmm.
Roland recognized that, even though he thinks he's kind of a pain in the ass sometimes. And I just really loved that quote because, I mean, I've tried telling one of my friends, like, hey, this probably isn't a really good idea, like it's none of my
No.
business, but like you don't seem super happy right now, like, and it really is like you might as well try to drink the ocean with a spoon as argue with a lover. And I don't think it means like your lover. I think it means like somebody else that's like smitten, like it's never gonna you're not gonna convince them, like they
Right.
have to figure this out for themselves. And it's echoed in how Roland like kind of stays awake and watches Odetta or Detta kind of like try to hurt Eddie while he's sleeping. It's like you kind of have to let people make mistakes, like you might as well try to drink the ocean with a spoon. Like they got to figure this out for themselves. And he's
Right.
giving Eddie the space to be able to do that, just like he was given the space to make mistakes when he was training under Court back in Gilead.
Oh,
Yeah, that all just like,
yeah.
well, it all
Uh,
just works so well. It's perfect.
And that is actually one part about Eddie and Susanna's love that I did really like about it because at no point was Roland like, "So you guys are in love now?" Like, what? He just like accepts it and immediately treats it like kind of a problem. He's like, "And you're in love with her, so like there's that."
There's that. If we didn't have enough issues already, We've got this person with hardcore split personality disorder, and we need to figure this out. And now you're in love with one. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Cool, Eddie.
great, great. One thing I found to be really profound and cool was kind of the need of others. Like we get so, I don't know, this happens to me where I'm just like in my brain and I'm like, I can do this on my own. And when Eddie has to be the only one kind of carrying them forward when Roland is he
Yeah.
just gets on the other side. Roland is in dying basically from fever and but I mean Eddie is withdrawing from what a 10-year to decade long heroin addiction where he's like shooting up with a needle like that is
Um,
hardcore suffering.
I don't know if it's
And
10 years. It's a while. Yeah, I
okay,
think
it
I
might not
can't
have been
remember
10
how
years.
old. I think Eddie's 23,
Oh, okay, and definitely not 10 years then.
or is he 27? I can't remember how old Eddie is. Yeah,
But
doesn't
he's
matter.
deep in it. And he wasn't able to do it on his own. So he clearly doesn't have the strength for himself. But it was the fact that he had to be strong for someone else
Yeah.
that was he was able to do it, which is really like a profound thing because many times we don't take care of ourselves like we do for others. Like there's um a statistic that says like 70 or 80% of people don't take their prescription fully like how they should, but like 95% of people make their dog take the prescription how it should be taken. So it's like, why are we caring for our dogs better than we even care for ourselves? And it was just kind of a cool lever that it took someone else for him to take care of and be like the stronger one to kind of break him of his addiction and really prove to himself that he was worthy again and not just a vampire on society and everyone around him.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how, like, I mean, by the end of this book, you almost think like Eddie is a better person than Roland, especially with that last conversation that they had. It's
Yes.
really, really cool. I don't
Yeah.
know, like, I don't know if I agree with that sentiment, and I don't want to get super into it without spoiling stuff. But by the end of this book, at least, it's like, man, Eddie's kind of a stand-up guy, and Roland pretty much just admitted that he would let his friends die again
Right.
to get to this
Again.
tower. Like it's
Yeah.
yeah. I have another
Um.
quote here that I would really like to read through if you don't mind.
Yeah. Not at all.
Um, it's kind of a lengthy one, but I think that it sums up a lot of what I was just talking about. It says, "If you have given up your heart for the tower, Roland, you have already lost. A heartless creature is a loveless creature, and a loveless creature is a beast. To be a beast is perhaps bearable, although the man who has become one will surely pay hell's own price in the end. But if you should gain your object, what if you should, heartless, storm the dark tower and win it? What could you do except degenerate from beast to monster? To gain one's object as a beast would only be bitterly comic, like giving a magnifying glass to an elephant. But to gain one's object as a monster, to pay hell is one thing, but do you want to own it? Jeez,
Ooh,
dude, like, god damn, like,
man,
that is
that
such incredible writing. Like, jeez.
so many times during this book, I'm like, just wow. Like, and then like he takes it to another level deeper, and I'm like, okay, now you're just showing off, but like, please don't stop.
Yeah, I mean, King can get really poetic, and he gets really
Yeah.
deep sometimes. And just this idea that like, uh, if the path that you're taking to get to the thing that you want turns you into a person that you wouldn't have even want to have been by the time you
Right.
get that thing, is it even worth living after having attained that goal if you're a person that you didn't want to be? Like
Right.
that's a
Like,
really big theme in this series, and it's that exact quote. It's a little long, but man,
but it's
it's
like
just
no empire wants to be an emperor of corpses, right? It's like, will you kill all of your enemies so you can rule over a graveyard, sort of thing? It's just like, and the person
well,
that you'll become along the way that you're forced to, does that justify the gaining? Will you lose more than you gain?
and just how alluring must this tower be, right? I mean, if because he knows that this is a dialogue he's having with himself. Like, this is internal dialogue. He's
Right.
thinking this all. He's not unaware of how much of a ass he's being about all of this, and it's just like, but the tower, the tower, the tower. It's just man, like
Yeah, he's almost looking
the
at himself from like
worst.
an outside perspective. He's like, I'm
Yeah.
committed and I'm not going to go off of this path, but he's smart enough to see outside of himself and like see what his actions are doing to himself. It's an interesting I'll be interested to see how Roland's character progresses and either devolves um, Mr. White style, or whether or not he can realize it and stop it before he Walter Whites out completely.
Hmm.
Um, okay, I have a question for you. So this is your second time reading through the book. Was there anything on this reread that you forgot about, snuck up on you, and you're like, oh yes,
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was the part where I think his name was Jack Andolini, but that part where they bring one of the mobster guys like through onto the beach, and then like
yeah,
Eddie and him are fighting, and Roland shoots Andolini's gun right when the guy is firing it, and he's like, I've only seen it happen 2 times, where like the bullet hits the gun as soon as the gun is firing, and then it blows up in the guy's face, tears his whole face off, and then he just like stumbles down the beach and gets eaten by lobstrosities. I was just like, okay, okay, oh my god, I forgot about that. Like that. That is like definitely one of the more intense parts of this book, and I just forgot that yeah, these get pretty dark and brutal
Mhm.
sometimes.
But
Like,
they're also kind of
yeah,
funny, right? Because then he does this thing where he backs up a couple minutes and he jumps outside to Balazar, who's like listening to this weird like thumping, and he's like, someone's like having a party on the neighborhood, but like I
yeah,
shouldn't worry myself about those loud noises. But he's just
yeah,
hearing the gunshots that are coming from through the portal.
yeah. It's really that part definitely. I kind of started remembering it like while I was reading it because I mean I read these books a while ago, like definitely like I don't know, I want to say like 6 or 7 years ago. Um, it's been a little bit. And so yeah, rereading it and just like, it's very descriptive, King. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, it is.
Appreciate you telling me exactly what some guy's face looks like after it's been blown off. Appreciate it.
He is not afraid to get super dark and grisly with it. Sometimes like, oh
Um,
wow, oh boy.
so as we start kind of wrapping it up here, what do you think is going to happen in the Wastelands? It's a big book, 600 pages.
Okay, what do I think is going to happen? Huh. Okay, so I just want to say right now, I super called it. We got to get our crew together in
Yep.
this next book. I called that one. Super did not call the ocean voyage prediction though.
Oh
That was
yeah, I know you said that, and I was like, they're not good.
I was
I
really
think
hoping for
you
me.
just love an ocean
I
voyage.
just love an ocean
Yeah,
voyage. Yeah, that's my
it's
thing.
fair. It's fair. It's valid.
So I didn't get that, which I was a little sad on, but I was justified that the collection of the friends and the crew being gathered was a thing. Boy, I have no idea. I have no idea.
I think you might be
Uh,
saying that like quite a bit more often as we're reading these too. Yeah.
yeah, like there's no like, oh, it's clearly going this way and it's clearly going in this direction, so inevitably it's like Roland will have an iron, straight A to B, shortest path, straight line approach at the tower, but I don't think that he even knows where it is or
Yeah.
like what it is. I have no idea if he even knows why he's trying to find the tower, which normally after a second book in a series, if I didn't know something critical like that, I would be pretty upset. But in this, it's just done in a way that it's like, nah, it's fine. I'll find out about it later.
I think we as the reader also are it's King's choice to keep us ignorant. You know, like we want to know like what is it about this tower that's making Roland so okay with ditching his friends? Like what is it okay, like
Right.
what is this thing? I mean, we got a little bit of a glimpse of it when the with the palaver between the man in black and Roland, but it wasn't enough. It's not enough for us to really be on Roland's side yet, you know.
Right.
So
I
yeah,
don't
it's
know what he's
very
hoping to
unpredictable.
accomplish.
Yeah.
Also, King really loves the word palaver.
Yeah, I love it
Am I
too.
saying that right? Palaver?
It's palaver.
Palaver. Okay, I looked
Yeah.
it up after like the sixth time that he uses it. I was like, it's got to be like a meeting of people where they
Yeah,
exchange
it's like a
words, and
conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
but he uses it very often.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody in a blue chambray shirt yet, but maybe.
Does that
That
happen a lot?
yeah, he loves a blue chambray shirt. In fact,
What is the
it's
chambray shirt?
it's like a it's not denim really, but like look it up. It's just you'll
Okay.
recognize the shirt like as soon as you see it. But it's like a work shirt kind of. Um but it's become kind of a meme over the last like decade or so that Stephen King always has a guy in a blue chambray shirt somewhere in one of his books. Um and
Oh
it's
yeah,
funny
I know
because
exactly these sort of
yeah,
shirts.
and it's funny because I just read Fairy Tale, which King wrote like a year ago. It was just published like 2 months ago, and Sure enough, he had a guy in a blue chambray shirt, and I feel like that was him kind of acknowledging the meme, or unless he
Right.
hasn't seen the meme and he really does just put it in all. I think he knew about that
He's
one
seen
though.
the meme and he's
Yeah, I
like
think
calling himself out.
that's so good. Yeah,
That's so good. Okay, so as we wrap up here, um, tell me a little bit about Katet. Like what? Like I know Ka is like the road, the path, fate, the direction you should go that you have no choice. But then he mentions like a Katet. Talk to me about that.
yeah. The quartet is you read the Wheel of Time, right? Yeah, you
Yeah, huh?
wait, okay. So it's
Up
like
until the like eighth book.
yeah. So you know what Taviran is, right? It's like a group of people bound together by destiny or fate.
Yes.
And that's kind of like Ka is kind of like this. It's like fate, or it's kind of like the mysterious mechanisms of the universe. That's how I look at it, at least.
Right.
Um, and the
Destiny.
quartet is like people that they almost had like no choice but to have been brought together. You know, and so the quartet is forming like the fellowship.
The
um
grouping of them. Okay.
yeah, that's what quartet is, at least in my opinion. I'm sure that somebody that's like way more into the Dark Tower would be able to give you
Yeah.
an even cooler definition, but yeah.
I love the introduction of Ka as a thing, though, because it really helps you as a reader to get over things like who's putting these doors there? Is someone leading him on this journey? Like, it's probably not the Man in Black because Man in Black doesn't want him to complete this journey, or so he says. Um, so, like, what is going on with this door? Did the tower lose these and they're just scattered across? Like, what? Let's go. But then you can just be like, Ka, and move forward, you know?
Ka is a wheel, you know ever turning. It's yeah,
Yes.
it's that element really works its way into this series as well.
The
And
wheel.
yeah, we'll talk more about it later.
Okay.
Just Ka in general. I almost got Ka tattooed on my forearm like the first time I read this. Um, which I mean, I might still get a Dark Tower tattoo, but I don't think I need like the letters KA like really big like on my forearm. Like I don't know, I still might,
It
but
might be kind of cool. You know,
might
we
be
get them
kind
all
of
like
cool.
fancified and stuff.
Yeah, I've seen some really really great Dark Tower tattoos.
And I love the kind of like he's almost making fun of himself too when he keeps saying "ka" because when Eddie is like frustrated with him, he's like, "Yeah, well, if you say it twice, it means like taking a poop," you know.
Yeah.
And then they laugh about it later.
Yeah, roll. Something that I really really liked about this book is the kind of uh like the demasculinization of Eddie and Roland. You know what I mean? Like there are these two like, one's a hardened like gunslinger, and one is a hardened like drug smuggler and heroin addict, and like he's from Brooklyn, and like but they like cry together and like laugh together, and they have like a lot of camaraderie, and like it's very refreshing, especially from something that came from the late 80s, where there are parts of this book that are have aged pretty badly. Like you don't have to read super far into this to really notice that there are words being used here that they would not fly these days. There are certain like phrases and sentences and stuff that just they're dead. Like we're not going back to using that kind of stuff. But there is something really cool about King writing in the late 80s and having like these two manly men like being able to cry with each other and be real with each other and like have this friendship that they have. And it's a complicated friendship. It's not just two guys like drinking beers. It's a very complex and emotional relationship that the two of them have, because they're both complex and emotional people. And I wanted to point that out. That it's very important to the rest of this series too.
It was kind of refreshing that so we get this like very masculine, confident, cool operator character, but he's still a real person and is not so confident and so like kind of ego driven that he doesn't allow his walls to be brought down. We can see some like real bond being formed between him and Eddie, almost like a brotherly sort of thing relationship that is coming
Yeah,
about.
and Eddie's kind of replacing Henry almost. And
Yeah.
there was also that moment that Eddie said, some people just like they want to feel like they're important because they want to care about people because it makes them feel better, or something like that. It was like, I'm paraphrasing really heavily there, but Eddie, I feel like Eddie was kind of, it seemed like he was talking about Henry, but I think he was actually talking about himself, and kind of like what you had said earlier about how Eddie kind of took the reins on making sure that he was able to transport Roland and Susanna. Like he'd be pushing Susanna and have Roland on his back or something, and like he's making this happen. He's taking care of them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of picture Eddie as like Jesse from Breaking Bad. I guess he was asked to be Eddie when they were like kind of floating the idea of turning this into a TV show. I think Jesse's probably a little bit too old for it now. Or, Aaron, I can't remember that guy's name.
Aaron
Um,
Pinkridge.
well, his name in the show is Jesse Pinkman,
Pinkman. Oh, right.
but I can't remember his name in like our world. Jesse Pinkman is kind of like on the surface like this tough guy, you know. But then you spend a little bit more time with him, and he's really sweet and emotional and empathetic, and like he doesn't want anybody. He doesn't want people to get hurt. You know, he doesn't want like bad things to happen. He's got some issues, you know,
Right.
and there's so much more to that character than just the junkie, you know, and that's how Eddie's painted at first, and that's how Roland sees Eddie. That's how Balazar sees Eddie, and even to some extent how Eddie's brother saw him, you know. And then
Mm-hmm.
Eddie loses his brother Henry, who he's got this major connection with, um, but then he kind of like gains another kind of quasi older brother, you know. It's yeah,
Yeah, one
damn,
that's not quite so toxic, you know.
still a little toxic.
Still a little toxic, definitely is a little toxic, but yeah, I really like their relationship, and I'm really excited to see how. So maybe my predictions won't be very good because like who the hell knows what's going to happen in this next book, but I am very excited to see how Susanna, now being one, moves forward and integrates herself into the group and what role she plays. You know, is she going to be like long range sniper, maps and navigations expert, you know, wizard, what's healer? You know, there's all the sorts of roles we need to fulfill. And I'm excited to see which one she takes.
Yeah, I can tell your voice is starting to get a little bit cracked up out
Yeah,
of here, so let's go ahead and end it right there. Um, Man, I'm so happy we're reading these books together. This is so cool. And
same.
Wastelands is going to be a great episode. I can already feel it. It's my favorite book, personally.
Really, the third one,
Yeah, third one's my favorite. It's very good.
I hate to even say like this one was so much better than the first one, though it was, but it was like they're so different. Each one is so
Yeah,
unique, and that's what I think really the pleasure of reading it is. It's like, well, this one was better than that one. I was like, man, they're so different that like
yeah.
it's hard to even
You don't know what
compare
you're gonna
them.
get. You have no idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's. I think that's the first time you have not been able to predict anything
I
before
know.
we
I'm
get
just
into
like,
another.
well, I'm excited to see what Susanna's gonna do.
All right, well, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this recap of book 2 in the Dark Tower series. This has been a blast. I'm so happy that we're all reading these together. Even if you're listening to this like 10 years from now, we're happy to have you here. And stick around for the next 6 episodes because we still have a lot of book to cover.
The
There's
guns
so
are gonna
much.
be slinging.
Everybody,
I'm so
hope you have an
excited.
awesome rest of your day. And of course, happy reading.
Bye, everybody. But also, Evan,
Oh, oh
long
yeah.
days
Oh,
and pleasant nights.
may you have twice the number. Almost
Yeah.
forgot. You snuck that in. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
I got you, boo.